Hello, this is Deborah Clay, fiction author and podcaster, and this is Castaway Books. Each week I ask an author to tell me about the books that have influenced their life and inspired their writing. This week's guest is Katharine Light. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Katharine Light to the Castaway Books today. Katharine's debut, like me, came out last year, so that's really exciting. And Katharine is a fellow director of the Romantic Novelists Association. So it's lovely to meet you here on my island, Katharine.
Hello, Deborah. I feel absolutely honoured to be on your island.
Great. Let's go straight into your first book. I love your choices. I'm looking forward to hearing all about them. So, book one.
Well, you set me a really difficult task. How on earth do you choose five books? So these are the five books I'm choosing today. If you ask me in a few months' time, I might choose different ones. So the first one, I decided that in order to try and simplify this slightly, I would choose books that I have read at least twice, and several I've read on numerous occasions, because that actually would make it simpler. So the first book um, is Ballet Shoes, and this is a 1951 copy that was my mum's, which she handed down to me, and I have now handed down to my daughter.
Oh,
And I can remember going on holiday. We lived in Glasgow, and my parents thought it would be a really good idea to drive to Italy.
yeah.
And I took that book with me, and I must have read it. I must have read it about 10 times. I literally got to the end of the book and I started all over again because I just absolutely loved it.
Oh, seeing that book reminds me of a book I've got, which is The Little Princess that my grandma bought me in a church jumble sale. And that is like that. It's absolutely beaten out with beautiful glossy frontispiece pictures in. Does yours have pictures in it?
Yes, it does. And in fact, so for anybody who doesn't know, this is about three orphans who are brought up together. And then there's the most lovely little
Oh,
picture of the three of them, which, yeah,
uh, did you do ballet? I loved ballet. I wanted to be a ballerina when I grew up.
I did. I did ballet and my daughter did ballet. Unfortunately, when we moved from Glasgow to Manchester when I was 10, um, my mum and I, we had a conversation about it, and she'd been given a recommendation of a teacher from my teacher in Glasgow, and we never quite did it. And so I've done a bit of dance since then, but not very much. But
Oh,
I love going to the ballet.
that was a big move for you. You think you said you were around 10 years old when you moved from Glasgow to Manchester. So
Yeah.
how was that finding friends in a new school and making connections at that age?
Do you know what? I'm going to a birthday party this weekend with four friends from school. So my friend Sophie, it's her birthday on Saturday, and I met her when I was 10 in my final year at primary school, and she and I then went to the grammar school together and were in the same class. So although I was changing schools twice, actually, because I knew Sophie and she's still a great friend, so that did make it easier.
How lovely. Those friendships with people that have known you at a younger stage of your life are precious, aren't they?
Absolutely.
I still meet up with, there are seven of us, girls who all went to the same secondary school. And we're all 60, well, I say we're all 65. The youngest isn't quite, and I'm 65 next week, but we're all of a similar age. And we
Yes,
meet up once or twice a year, and it's lovely. Mm. So that was your first book choice, and it's Ballet Shoes is by Noel Streatfeild.
that's right.
So what's your second book choice?
Uh, so again, this was quite tricky. I was quite inclined to go with Middlemarch,
Mm.
George Eliot. I'm a big fan of George Eliot, and I'm talking to you from Wandsworth, and she lived just up the road. There's a blue plaque. So there are many things I love about her. But actually, I haven't read Middlemarch for a long time, so I've actually gone for Persuasion.
Mhm.
So Jane Austen, this is a lovely version of Persuasion. Um, for A level, I did Emma, but actually, Persuasion is the book I come back to. It's a love story about two people who were together, and for various reasons, uh, Anne Elliot is persuaded to give him up, and then it's 8 years later, and what's going to happen? So it's just one of those delightful books I love to go back to.
Mm.
Very satisfying and a great ending. There's a wonderful letter that the hero, Captain Wentworth, writes to Anne at the end to sort of declare his love. And it's wonderful.
It is. I remember reading that and feeling so sad for her because they were in love and she had to live without him for all those years. Oh, it's
Yeah.
awful. I love Jane Austen. In fact, as you know, because I was telling you that we recently had some readings from Jane Austen at the Frinton Literary Festival, which
Mm.
I'm on the committee for. And at that point, I decided, you know, that lovely time between Christmas and New Year, the Twixmas thing. I think that's the time I'm going to try and read my collected works, got them all in one novel. So I think
Oh,
that's the perfect time to sit down and
yeah.
read them one after the
Yeah.
other. Yeah, that'll be my
Lovely.
Christmas treat. It's lovely. But I think the books that you choose, you study for GCSE and A level, are the ones that they really stick with you throughout your life, don't they? For
Yes.
me, it was D.H. Lawrence, Women in Love, The Rainbow, we studied. And then I read every one of D.H. Lawrence's books after
Yes.
that. And you,
Well, I did Sons and Lovers,
oh, yes, I love that.
Emma by Jane Austen, Far from the Madding Crowd, Thomas
Ooh.
Hardy, Middlemarch, George Eliot. They're all fabulous books. I could have chosen any of them, actually.
Yes, and they're ones you can return to again and again.
Yeah.
Yes. And the other one we did was W.B. Yeats' poetry, and I can still quote
Oh,
that
yes.
poetry. It's
Yeah.
wonderful. So, what were you doing at that time? From then, that was you were reading that around you time you were at school. You were going on to university.
Yes. Yes. So I suppose I discovered Jane Austen in my probably in my early teens. And I remember reading Pride and Prejudice first. I think we did that at school. And of course, it's wonderful. And then discovering more and more of them. So probably going off to uni, I came to London, I went to UCL. I was, yes, I think I was probably reading quite broadly at that point, when you've got a bit of time.
Mm, mm. And when you lived in London, because I studied in London as well, finding bedsits and places to stay was a challenge. What sort of area were you living in? Did you have a flat share or anything?
So the first year I was in a hall of residence called Ramsey Hall, which is just west of Tottenham Court Road, so right in the centre. So I
Mm.
could walk to the university and get to know that part of Bloomsbury. In my second year, I lived in a house in Haringey, which was a bit grim, but actually, a couple of months ago, I met up with the girl that I shared a flat with, and she and I had lost touch, and it was just so wonderful to see her. And then my final year, I lived in Camden, and my daughter doesn't live in Camden now, but she lived in Camden for 2 years, and she lived opposite where I lived on the same road. So
Oh,
that was a real trip down memory lane as well.
that was all my stomping ground. I went to college, occupational therapy college at that time was around Swiss Cottage. So I had to live around Hampstead area. But I
Mm.
had place I lived for the longest was in around Gospel Oak Station. And my best friends lived in Kentish Town. So we would go to Camden Market every weekend. It was before it got all spoilt as it is now. Going the Hawley Arms for our bubble and squeak. I worked in the Belmont pub opposite the Roundhouse. So all of that area is very familiar to me too.
Yeah.
Happy days.
Yes.
And it's wonderful when you're that age and suddenly you're in the middle of London. You feel so grown up and worldly. The world's your oyster. It's a wonderful feeling.
Yeah. I mean, in a funny way, I think of that time of my life as being, in a way, the time I was most lonely, and knew least about myself. I had gone to London. My parents had just split up, and I felt quite rudderless. And my sister went to Sheffield University, and I remember taking her with my mum, and there was a big sort of welcoming committee and all these activities. And when I went to London, there wasn't any of that. And I felt quite a pang, and that I really should have taken a year off and sort of grown up a bit before I went.
Well, it was very hard, your parents splitting up. That must have been a real emotional turmoil for you. And then not to be there, to be away from them. I can
Yes,
understand how that would make you feel, a bit lost.
yes.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think sometimes just admitting that, admitting that you made mistakes and, um, this and the other, I think that's quite helpful.
And we also had all of the studying to do and the pressure on us to
Yeah,
succeed and being afraid because you'd had the protection of school. Suddenly, it's a whole different world at university.
that's right. You're on your own.
Yeah, and all that expectation. Suddenly, you're meant to be a grown up and find your own way
Yes.
and succeed. And you think, wait,
I, I still don't feel that I'm a grown.
I know what you mean. It's lovely now I've retired. I can just please myself, and it's
Yeah.
great. So let's go on to book three.
Oh, so I've gone back to my Scottish roots a bit. So this is Ian
Hmm.
Banks, The Crow Road, which I absolutely loved. I read it for the first time. I think Aidan and I had got married, and we decided about 2 years in that we would take about 5 months off and we would go traveling. And it's one of the books that I took with me. And one of the places that we went to was Hawaii. And the big island, which is the island of Hawaii, has a big mountain on it called Mauna Kea. And at the top of the mountain, there are some observatories. And we knew about the observatories because there's a character in The Crow Road who is an astronomer who goes to Hawaii. And it was just one of those things. I said, "Oh, let's go and have a look." And we took the trip. You go to the visitor centre, and then you have to get a lift in a four-wheel drive to go up to the top. And we did that, and it was wonderful in the snow. So we'd had um, a swim in the morning in the hotel, and then we were up in the snow, and then we went back to the visitor centre, which I think is at something like 9,000 feet, so it's
Mm.
quite high. And they said, "Oh, just wait for the stars." And what happens is that dusk falls very quickly, and the cloud on the mountain comes down, and we were in the car enveloped in cloud, and then the cloud was down in the valley, and then the stars were there, and a couple of chaps just randomly turned up, a guy with his telescope, and we had this amazing evening looking at the stars. But that was all because we had found out about it from the book. And the book is a wonderful tale of a family. um, a young guy called Prentice is trying to work out his life and what he's going to do, and then there's a bit of a family tragedy. Somebody dies, and he's trying to make sense of it all, and it's wonderful. And a lot of it is set in Glasgow, which is where I was born. So happy days.
And lovely that Aidan read it as well, so you could share. Do you still read similar books? Do you
You
share
know
books?
what? I'm not sure he did. He's not really a great one for fiction. He's incredibly supportive, but he's not a great one for fiction.
And my husband reads a lot, but he reads non-fiction. And I think it's a
Yeah.
man thing. It's probably a bit
Yeah.
sexist. But so where did you meet Aidan? Did you meet him soon after uni? Or was it later in life?
So actually, we met through work. I think I was about 25, 26, and uh, we were working in the same building, but for different companies. And so we started going out in secret. Nobody knew. And then very, very quickly, we started going out, and 11 weeks later, we
Hmm.
got engaged.
Wow. How
And
many years ago was this?
so this was so I was 26,
Wow.
and um, uh, so the first we told any of our colleagues, it was, "Oh, by the way, I'm getting married." So that was that was that was quite fun. But then we had a sort of a year before we actually got married, so which probably was quite a good idea.
That's a very romantic story. And to be married for so long as well. You obviously knew as soon as you met him that he was the right one.
Well, he's wonderfully interesting, and he's a real Shakespeare. I mean, he did his PhD in Shakespeare, so it's what he's, and because he's quite well read, as you say, reading nonfiction, he's always got something interesting to say. So
Mm. Oh, romantic.
we got things to talk about 32 years later.
Wow, that's lovely. Yes, we celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary this year.
Oh,
I met Sherman
congratulations!
when I was 21, and yeah, he's 12 years older than me, but that was yeah, that was very romantic. So let's go on to book four.
So now you will see what I really spend the books that I really really love. So this is book four.
Mhm.
This is Jane Sanderson, and I'm trying to think. Do you know what? I found out about this book because it was shortlisted for contemporary romantic novel of the year with the Romantic Novelists
And
Association.
it is for those that can't see mixed tape.
It's mixtape, Jane Sanderson, and
Excuse me.
I absolutely loved it. And I think it was a book that I got to the end and I just started reading all over again. So it's about Alison and Dan. It starts in Sheffield. They are boyfriend and girlfriend in their late teens. And she, in particular, comes from a really, really difficult background and for various reasons ends up leaving. And she actually ends up in Adelaide in Australia. Um, and I suppose there's a bit of a story there because Adelaide was a lot of Adelaide was laid out by Colonel William Light, who is an ancestor of mine, a
Amazing.
great uncle 5 times removed or something or other. Um, so it's quite interesting that she ends up in Adelaide, and then there's a whole musical theme. So they 20 years later discover each other, sort of, I think, on Twitter, and rather than sending messages, they start sending music tracks, and it's What Happens Next, and it's absolutely wonderful. I loved it.
Oh, do you know, the thing about this program and interviewing people is it just keeps adding to my pile of books because so I'm going to definitely order that one now. So not only do I end up reading the author, I'm going to be reading your one, like us, and I'm going to be sorry, I have to just check I haven't given the wrong name. Yes, no, like me, like me, I forwarded. Show us your book.
Yes, so
It's beautiful cover, like
that
me.
is that is like me. I've only got a proof of the next one, but that's the next
Oh,
one.
beautiful. The next one's called Me Too, and the covers are beautiful. They're similar. They've got the same silhouettes of a man and a woman.
Yeah,
Um, it's just, and one's got a lovely blue background, the other one, the green one, but they just look lovely. Yes.
I'm
Oh,
very pleased with them, I
congratulations.
must
When
say.
does that second one come out, the sequel?
14th of November.
And it's a sequel, is it?
It is a sequel, but it's also a standalone novel.
Oh, how
So
exciting.
you could read it, hopefully,
And
and
when,
understand it, having not read the first one.
and I hope you're going to have a good book launch.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on that. That is good news. So mixtape. So yes, so I will be ordering mixtape as well because that sounds
Mm.
really interesting. So tell us about how you became a published author. When did you start writing?
So I mean, I've been writing for a very, very long time. I have a sister, Emma, who is exactly 5 years younger than me. Her birthday is the day after mine.
Oh.
And I started writing stories about a girl who met a pop star.
Mhm.
Not at all based on John Taylor from Duran Duran. Just like to say that. Um, and so I would write these stories for Emma, I suppose when I was in my mid-teens.
Mhm.
And it must have been, I don't know, whenever, what was that? End of the 70s, beginning of the 80s, when Duran Duran were,
Mm.
the pop group. And then I have kept writing, but I've had to do other things and I've had to, earn a living and this, that, and the other. And I tried to kickstart the writing again in 2018. I started a course. I'd done a couple of Open University courses, and I started a wonderful course called the Novel Studio, which it runs at City University. And I'm sad to say that actually my cohort was the last one to do it completely in person. It now runs online, which of course has its advantages because people who don't live in London can do it. But it was really wonderful that we were all together, and I went and met several of them in September, which was wonderful. So we keep in touch. As a result of that year, I worked on Like Me that year. And as a result of that, I had an interest from some agents and I signed with somebody and it was all going well.
Mm.
Then COVID hit. And about a year later, she and I had worked on the book and she'd made some really good suggestions and she definitely improved it. But she then said, I don't think I'm the right person to take it forward to publishers, which was a shame. And I then hit the, she gave me some recommendations. I wrote to some people. I think this was something like October 2020 when every other person in the world had written a book in lockdown.
Mm.
And I got very, very little response. And I began to think that I was not what people were looking for and that I was, I was too old and I don't know. And so then I really didn't do anything. And then my dear dad got terminal cancer and he died April 2023. And I thought, what am I waiting for? I've now I've now written 4 books and I'm in the middle of writing book 5. What am I waiting for? And so I thought I'm just going to have a go at doing the independent publishing. And what was really lovely was that I independently published Like Me last November, and it then got nominated. You can see
Mm.
it got nominated
Mm.
for selfies.
Listed for the 2004 Selfies Award. Well done.
Yes,
Mm.
which was wonderful. So there's an adult fiction section, and uh, and I thought, well, I will just keep going. So
Mm.
so hence
Fantastic.
book 2 coming out next month.
Well done. You've got a similar story and timeline to me because it was my first pub book. The Borrowed Boy was published in August 2020. I had been
Uh-huh.
represented by, it was actually by Madeline Milburn for about a year.
Yes.
She worked with me on my book and then she couldn't find a home for it. And it was 2020, like you, and it was very
Mhm.
hard. And everything I think changed in the publishing world at that time. I think it's got much harder to find a publisher. I think
Yep.
their sales for books had changed because they couldn't advertise on railway stations anymore. All of the things that they used to advertise and sell books were not so open to them. So I think that the marketing departments within publishing got very, very focused on what is going to sell, what is going to, hit all the right buttons and guarantee a
Yep.
sell in this very, very competitive market. But this wonderful thing about self-publishing, I think being an indie publisher is wonderful. I don't know about you, but I mean, I've been able to. I was talking to a cover designer today because I've got another book coming out in February, and looking at the designs with her, having a book launch and inviting all your people, all your readers, your local readers. I just find it so uplifting,
Yep.
rather than having to wait always on somebody else to take
Yep.
the lead.
Yep.
So well done. Congratulations on that.
You.
So let's get on to book 5.
Okay, so this is Catherine Fox, Love for the Lost. Now you can see that I like this book a lot because look, there's a more recent. So she wrote, I think in the 1980s, a trilogy of books. So Angels and Men, The Benefits of Passion, and the third one is called Love for the Lost. And it's a book that I keep going back to. So it is a love story, but it's a love story that doesn't quite resolve. And every time I read it, I think maybe they're going to get together this time. And she wrote those, and then there was a pause, and she wrote some other stuff. She wrote some stuff, young adult, I think, and was writing a column. And I happened to discover that she was blogging some, well, blogging a first book, and then some more books, which maybe was about 10 or 15 years ago. And she now has a whole series of books which are called the Linchester Chronicles, about a fictional diocese in the north of England somewhere. And I discovered in one of those books the happy ending, Love for the Lost, which just I was so thrilled with. I really hope that one day I might meet Catherine Fox and just say what a great pleasure I have had from reading. And in fact, I introduced her to my dad, who read all the books. And in fact, that's his copy. And just behind me here, that's a little pile of her books, which were
Oh,
dad's books.
I haven't heard of her before, but again, another one that I'll now have to read. Explain to me about blogging about her books. Was she actually sharing the content of her book?
Yes, I think she was blogging 2,000 words a week, I
Ah.
think. And so she would start at the beginning of the year, and you would be desperate for, Monday when the next chapter came out. But she writes specifically about sort of Church of England diocese, so everybody from the bishop down to the lowliest curate and everybody else in between. So she's got some really fabulous characters.
And that's interesting because that kind of fits with a bit about the job you're doing now, doesn't it? You're working with a church or not?
Yes, it does, and also the fiction that I write. So Catherine Fox is writing about a Christian life,
Mm-hmm.
and I am also writing about characters who have a faith and, like me, has some sex in it. So I remember having a conversation with my mum, going, "It's quite a lot of sex in it," because do you know what? People have sex, and even Christians have sex. And Catherine Fox also has written about sex. And I thought, do you know what? If she can do it, I think I can do it.
Well done.
But you're right. Yes, I work for a church.
Yes. Is faith important to you? Is that a strong part of your life?
Absolutely. I think I think I've learned a lot, and I think I've learned a lot the last couple of years. And when you're faced with the death of a parent, having having the sensation that I will see him again is immensely comforting. I don't know how people do it without it.
Mm.
Um, yes, it's immensely important, and being able to pray for my children every day, and for friends who are unwell, and for all those things, and
Mm.
and yeah.
Mm. Mm. I can see that. And what is your job at the moment working with the church? What is it you do with them?
So my job title is head of operations, which basically means I organise things. So the next thing that's coming up is the Christmas fair, right at the end of November. So that's a big day where the church is open, and we welcome lots and lots and lots of people through the doors. And so quite a lot of those sorts of things I organise.
Mm. So you're working full time?
I'm working almost full time. I've got Fridays where I write.
Uh-huh. And what about your children? Are they still at home? Have they all flown the nest?
They have flown the nest this year, so both of them got sort of slightly caught by COVID. So my son had been away to university and then came back, and of course ended up with us. And our daughter was here, so in fact we spent a lot of the pandemic together, which was just such a treat. They are both in London, so my son works in finance in Canary Wharf, and my daughter is an actor, and she lives in North London. She is graduating on Friday. So the four of us are going to that and going to have dinner together, which would be very nice.
Fantastic. You're lucky to have them live close. Well, we're
Absolutely.
coming to an end, so I've got one more question to ask you, and that is the luxury you'll take with you on the island.
Well, this might be a bit of a cheat, Deborah,
Always
frankly.
are.
But if you always have that fantasy, don't you, about being on Desert Island Discs and what various people ask for as luxuries. I would love, bear with me, I would love an art shop. So, so an art shop would have fabulous stationery and paper and pens and all sorts of art materials and maybe some art books. So I love looking at art as well. And I thought, you know what, that would be does that count? Am I allowed
It's
that?
kind of you've got like all everything that the shop provides, but okay, I'll let you have a magic pop-up shop in a fantasy island.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. And
Thank you so much, Deborah. It's been an absolute treat.
me too. Bye bye.